Ladies and gentlemen, thanks so much for being here. We'll call this meeting to order. Buzz, would you mind grabbing the door for us and pulling someone? Thank you. I'm not trying to shut the pro tem out. I just again, we'll call this meeting to order and get started. Chairman Dixon, thank you so much for being here today. Ladies and gentlemen, we have two items on the agenda today. If you want to talk to us about your bill, give us that LC number, and we'll the microphone's yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee members. Thank you for allowing me to bring Senate Bill 498 before you today, working off of LC 492821S. Senate Bill 498, it passed the Senate with bipartisan support with a vote of 49-3. You also, in your folder, there's a committee sub that I'm in favor to that makes a minor change. It's an administrative change in nature, and I'll describe that here in a bit. The overall of the bill, it addresses a significant change or challenge faced by Georgia's charter schools when they're financing their facilities. Senate Bill 498, it creates a system including a revolving loan fund to provide charter schools with increased access to affordable capital. It's for their schools, for their buildings, or for remodels of their existing schools. The state currently covers less than 1/3 of charter schools' facilities expenses. Unlike public schools, Georgia charter schools receive little to no ESPLOS funding to support their capital needs, and they cannot levy taxes to pay for their buildings. What this bill does, the first part, it establishes the Georgia Charter School Facilities Authority. The second part outlays the authority's ability to levy and issue revolving loans and other funds to support charter schools' capital projects. And then third, it mitigates risk to those loans, capping the loan amount at 20% of the project cost. And also the term of the loan cannot be longer than the charter's than the length of the charter, which at the longest would be 5 years. As far as what the sub does, it clarifies the authority's attachment to let me pull my it clarifies their attachment to the Georgia State Financing and Investment Commission. And it also, what it does is it removes the requirement of the authority to provide technical assistance to charter schools. And the reason is simply other organizations, including the State Charter School Commission, are already doing that. Be happy to answer any questions, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, if you could, I just had one real quick. Let me switch over here. While I'm looking for that, I know we've got questions from the members of the committee, so I'll find this. Representative Alexander.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. What is the total cost that it would be to establish this charter?
Yeah, there's no funding from the state to establish it. The funding would be from the state would be any of the loan cost, or if there were a down payment, they could also require their charter school to establish a reserve fund, or they could put up interest in real estate as far as for securing the loan.
Right. Another question, Mr. Chairman. Is there a reason why a new facilities authority is necessary for a charter school?
Yes, ma'am. Yeah, great question. Simply, the charter schools, they don't have access to ESPLOS funding, like our schools do, and then they also, they don't have access. They can't levy taxes, like our public school can as well. As far as for facilities, and facilities is a big, issue for charter schools. They've got, I believe, 21,000 students on a waiting list currently, and access to these loans would give them the ability to be able to build new schools and also remodel existing schools.
Other questions from the committee members? We're going to see if that works.
Yes, I think so. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. Senator, thanks for the bill. I wanted to make sure I heard you correctly. Did you say currently the state covers less than a third of charter school expenses? Did I hear that?
That's correct, Representative.
Okay. And I just wanted to clarify one other thing. Did you say these loans would be capped at 20%
Of the, yes, it would be.
the expense of the project?
Yes, ma'am. That's
Okay.
correct.
All right. Thank you for that.
Thank you, Chairman Carpenter.
Is it not true that this is a unique solution to address funding concerns? This would allow this authority to help undergird some of these loans so that these schools would receive more advantageous loan rates when they're borrowing money.
That's correct, yes.
And then those funds wouldn't have to be reappropriated every year. They could literally, would be a pot of money as the interest was paid, that pot would continue to grow and people would be able to access it.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the committee? Seeing none, Senator, I know you have to go, and that's fine if you need to. We do have a number of folks signed up to speak, so
Okay.
I think you've exhausted the questions from the committee. So again, I know it's a busy day, so if you need to go, we'll take care of you, okay?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee
Thanks,
members.
sir. We've got a number of folks who want to speak. If you'll come up and join us at the podium, we'll just go in the order that you signed up. So Donovan, if you want to come and join us, and if you don't mind, each of our speakers today, if you'll just introduce yourself, who you're with, so that those watching at home know who you are.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My name is Donovan Head. I'm the Executive Director of the State Charter Schools Commission. As a state agency head, I'm not sure that I can say we support a bill outright, but we do fully support the conversation and the attention that this is finally getting. Our charter schools, we have 51. Very few of those are in traditional school buildings. I would say a lot of them are in former shopping malls, they're getting very creative because they don't have the funding to do this. And what's filling the gap right now are lending institutions that specialize in charter schools, because you have situations where financial institutions are unwilling to do a 5-year, when they're on a 5-year term, to make a loan. So this would be very helpful to our sector. It's something other states have done. So we definitely would like to see some help for our charter schools. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Bonnie, if you will.
On behalf of the Georgia Charter Schools Association, we weigh and we say we concur and fully support.
You're just trying to earn brownie points today for being short. Maria?
Good afternoon, Chair and committee members. I'm Maria Alejandra Kepler, principal of Tapestry Public Charter School in Clayton, a 6th through 12th grade charter school serving a neurodiverse population. We're proud to open Tapestry Clayton this coming August, having provided more than a decade of award-winning inclusive education at Tapestry DeKalb. Tapestry has a small footprint, but a big impact. We support learners who require a smaller, more individualized learning environment, and we ensure that they have pathways to academic success and post-secondary opportunities. In DeKalb, it took lean years, a lot of luck, and a far friendlier real estate market to establish ourselves. As we prepare to open in Clayton, we're faced with the realities of 2026, less funding, a tough market, and prohibitive lending costs. To get a sense of what's at stake, let me walk you through a Tapestry school. Classrooms are filled with collaboration, projects, and co-teaching. Music, art, and drama infuse every part of the school. The arts are an excellent means of expression for our students who are still working to find their voices. The makerspace hosts hands-on experiences for all kinds of learners. Activity and quiet rooms offer places for students to put strategies into practice as they learn to regulate themselves. This is Tapestry. It's beautiful, and it changes lives. But we cannot bring it to Clayton without a building. Without a building, there are no collaborative active classrooms, teams of teachers, no students finding voices in their music and art rooms or on a stage, no makerspace where learning comes to life for students who may learn best by doing, and no quiet space for students to self-regulate so that they can return to their education with little time lost. Senate Bill 498 establishes the Georgia Charter School Facilities Authority to provide quality charters like ours with the access to facilities funding that we need to fulfill our mandates. We have the support of our students, families, communities, and our authorizers. We have our missions. We just need our buildings. Please vote yes.
Thank you very much. Buzz? He gets a special pass as a former member.
I'll be very brief, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, and members of the committee, thank you. Buzz Brockway, the hat I'm wearing at the moment is as a member of the State Charter School Commission. I'm one of the speaker's appointees to that post, but I just want to emphasize something that Chairman Dixon mentioned. Charter school funding is tough. And the number one reason that charter schools fail in the state of Georgia is because of facilities costs. And in fact, just a few weeks ago at our February meeting, we had to accept a school returning its charter to us and surrendering its charter, I guess is the proper term, because they just could not handle the funding costs, the facilities costs. So this bill, I know the legislature has taken a number of steps over years to improve charter school funding, and things are much better. But this bill would help tremendously and I believe, would greatly reduce the number of charter schools that fail because of facilities costs. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate you being here. And one more, China. I'll let you keep that.
Good afternoon, Chairman and member of the committee. My name is China Cartridge Clements, and I am the founder of Power Public Schools, which is the first AI-empowered charter school in the nation, locally approved in Cobb to open in 2027. I'm here today because the greatest challenge for charter founders is not students, teachers, or community support, it's facilities. Charter schools are public schools serving Georgia families, yet we do not have access to equal financing for our buildings. Founders spend years, I know countless founders myself, that have had to delay opening because of the search for space and paying higher costs simply because of the financing system. And so Senate Bill 498 is a game changer. Creating the Georgia Charter School Facility Authority would give charter schools responsible access to loans, financing, and tools to build safe and high-quality learning environments. The bill is about fairness, stability, and opportunity for Georgia students. When charter schools have affordable facilities, students have futures and schools long-term. I respectfully ask for your support for Senate Bill 498. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Appreciate everyone being here today and for your comments. With that, we've exhausted our questions and our speakers. What's the will of the committee? We have a motion. We have a second. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed, like sign? Okay, thank you. Motion carries. Again, members, we have one more item on the agenda. Superintendent, if you would come and join us. Appreciate you being here today and taking time with us. I'll let you come up to the microphone and so that we're an equal opportunity employer. If you'll introduce yourself for the folks at home who may be watching, and I'll jump right in.
Superintendent of Georgia.
Thank you very much, Superintendent. We often like to get together here in 341 and talk budget and priorities, and I think the last time you were here, you presented to the Joint Appropriations Committee back in January, and you put up a QR code with some of your initiatives and priorities, and
yes,
I just would love if you could maybe bring us up to speed on how those priorities are going, and then we can open up for some questions.
Well, I think, again, I want to just say thank you to the committee, and again, thank you to members of the General Assembly. I think we've had a very productive session so far. A lot of things we've looked at. HB 372, the return to work, so that continues to progress, which we are very excited about, allowing our teachers to come back, and again, with the work and initiative there. HB 1193, of course, this is, I believe, the Speaker's bill, which directly addresses literacy, and especially in the area that we're looking at, putting coaches, and I appreciate the work that the Speaker has done with that. His wife, Ms. Dale Burns, I think we've had some good conversations. We have actually seen within the school system, we fund the lowest 5% of our schools. Again, that 60%, we've had coaches This will be the second year. So far, we've seen good gains. I think on average a 15% gain as far as scores in I believe grades K through 3 right now. Initially, what we've seen right now, we continue to see good gains. Milestones last year, we saw an increase as high as 29%. So, I think that this is something I'm fully back in getting these coaches, into our school systems and giving that level of support. H-Bill 1009, this is the cell phone bill. We just actually came from the committee in the Senate with Chairman Hilton. I'm glad to say that has now been moved to rules. So, we are very appreciative of the impact that we continue to see with, having that cell phone. Again, I really hate to say cell phone ban, but I think it's more of a student liberation, giving them both relationship and an academic time back. And again, the initial moves we're seeing, definitely is paying off. SB 556, again, for fine arts, allowing, our area for kids that have, the Hope Scholarship and for Rigor, instead of having to make a choice between perhaps not taking fine arts, but another area, perhaps it could be in English or social studies, so sociology that may follow in that. So we're hopefully the House will pass that. The teacher tax credit revisions, again, SB 512. The expansion of teacher personal days, again, that was an SB 448, and again, very glad to see that move. And again, want to thank the House, and especially the area of closing that gap, making sure that we had that $2,000 supplement for educators, which is very well received throughout the state, and we appreciate the House and its work to make sure that became, was becoming a reality for us. And of course, right now with HR 1582, we're looking at, a resolution that is going to look at the 21-year salary cap for educators. And I can tell you as an individual that cap was in place in 1988 when I started. And it is something I think as we begin to think about teacher recruitment, especially retention, it is something that we want to say. So, we continue to monitor, bills, but those are some that we know that specifically that came out of the priorities that we offered, and we continue to see movement. So again, we want to thank for members of the House that carry those bills, and again, for your consideration, any bills that have crossed over from the Senate.
I know we probably have some questions from members of the committee while the superintendent's here.
Sure.
If everybody can just press their button when Chairman Jones.
There we go. We're live. Mr. Superintendent, thank you so much. We appreciate the opportunity.
Sure.
Generally speaking, at least for me, I appreciate all those initiatives, and most of them I think I voted in on either the Education Appropriations or the Education Committee. One of the two things that I'm struggling with right now as it relates to K-12, and I'll say pre-K through 12, is this. One is, have we thought of ways that we can fundamentally change effectively the outcomes that we are seeing across the state? Mm-hmm. They are so varied across the 180 school districts, not including our charters. Mm-hmm. And money is not the common denominator in terms of success or failure. Sure. I think we can all agree to that. So are there more strategic viewpoints coming out of the DOE to give us a view of how we see 2030 or 2035 mm-hmm. in terms of bringing up those districts that frankly are falling so far behind in our 3rd grade reading, our 8th grade math, et cetera? That's number one. And then number two, what have you seen, if anything, and I know the pro tem had to leave, but the efforts that the pro tem has led on early childhood education, I know some of that hits DECAL, but I know some of that also hits DOE. Could you maybe give us an understanding in terms of how you're seeing early ed as it applies to the DOE, and what it is that we're seeing in terms of early outcomes to indicate any type of indicator for us so that we can see hopefully an upper right-hand trajectory from those children that are benefiting from that?
Okay. Again, appreciate the question. As we begin to think about adding and supporting our districts, especially the lowest districts, I think one of the things we have done and been working on since the end of COVID, we are replacing our standards. And I think that has been extremely beneficial for us. Again, we were under for many years something what we call Common Core. Common Core did not have the fundamental supports that we continue to see today. One of the areas we look at math, this is actually our 3rd year with implementation. Since the implementation, we've looked at, making sure that, we had traditional math. As I rolled into office, one of the things that I heard as far as one of the strongest complaints from parents was I had third grade parents who could not help their kids with third grade math. And I think that was one of the things that I was very burdened with, that we cannot disenfranchise the parents. We have to have their involvement. We have to have their support. Since then, many of our courses, when we look at the milestones testing, we are now actually back up to pre-pandemic, scores. We continue to see the support across the board. Of course, we have some legislation now that is giving our young people who are excelling in math the opportunity to continue to exceed. So I think trying to expand those opportunities, one of the ways in which we look at, providing relevance to our kids as well, that now that we have these, the standards in place, we're expanding opportunities such as CTAE, adding practicality and reality in there. And as I think about an area that what personal finance, I think that of course is very heavy laden in math. We continue to expand opportunities from pre-K all the way up, and reinforcing the math standards. In the area of literacy, this is our first year that we will actually be testing our new standards in literacy. So again, phonics has been brought back in style. I think one of the ways in which was very troubling. We did not have the science of reading. We did not have the components, even in writing, that would support sustained growth. And I think that's where we saw a flat line of our growth. So I think as we continue to move forward, the intent is that we'll see what we saw in math with that. Our instruction as far as looking at our teachers, giving them the ability to have actually the science of reading, and whether it's letters trainings, to support them becoming, I would say, more efficient, instructors of literacy. Working with higher ed, with the chancellor, and because their teachers become our workforce, and I believe it is critical that we have a strong alignment between higher ed and what we're expecting, once they get into the classroom. So I think as we continue to see that, what we have seen initially, once again, with our lowest performing schools, putting those coaches in place, this will be the second year, but the first year we saw exceedingly good gains, and this is at the bottom. And if we're seeing, 15% gains with the bottom, the more you get up to that mid part of that scale, we should be able to see, even more, a more positive advancement at a more rapid growth. So I think that collaboration between the agencies, the really, I would say, the unification and the synergy that is going on throughout the state will definitely pay big benefits, because we're already seeing that in place.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, School Superintendent, for finding time to come to the Appropriations Committee. I know it's lots of competing things for your time this time of year, but appreciate you being here. I had a constituent ask me this weekend a little bit about us funding these literary coaches and other things back. Says, our young people are not reading by third grade, and yet he sees graduation rates going up, but yet we're also doing a lot of remedial courses at college and technical school, and just explain to me or to him what's going on. I mean, we've had issues with reading in third grade since you and I have been up here, and now we've got a legislative initiative to try to work on that. What's your thoughts on this? Do you think this is going to help the problem now going forward, since we've seen some other states successful in doing this? Could you comment on, I mean, how are we having higher, his question really was, how are we having higher graduation rates when we can't teach them, when they're not being successful reading in third grade?
Well, I think one of the things that I mentioned here, that what we are looking at really is the foundational, fundamental piece of standards. And I think what you'll find out is that if you look at with the initiation of Common Core throughout the nation, everything dropped. It does not matter which state you're talking about, we began to see a drop in scores. One of the things you find out is, if you look at the NAEP, or the National Report Card, it wasn't just us, but it was like Massachusetts, the highest of the high. Saw dramatic scores. And because what you found out with that set of standards, that it did not reinforce our fundamental attack on how we should approach education. There was no science or reading. There was a very weak literacy component that was there. You found out that we did not do phonics. Again, just basic things that we, for many of us as we grew up, that was a part of what we did. And because of that, we did not necessarily set our teachers up for success. Now, when you look at where we were, of course, I mean, there are other factors that are involved with this. I mean, the past few years, we've had chronic absenteeism. And, as we know, if a child is not in school, and with COVID, we saw, at least on a national or a state average, 23% absenteeism. Well, that's going to translate into some issues when you're looking at testing. And that doesn't even include perhaps those that maybe did not qualify, or at least were not identified as chronic absentee, again, missing at least 10% of the school year. And I think, those are, factors that we definitely had to look at. And we are working to make sure that our kids are back in school. We have seen right now a decrease in absenteeism. We're down to 19%. Our goal within the next 5 years is to be back below 11%. So I think as we get our kids back in there. However, I would say that, to the credit of our teachers, we're not necessarily where we want to be at third grade. And I think, again, we're roughly about 65%, when it comes to, to our proficiency rate. But I think what is encouraging is that when you look at, some people say, well, Mississippi's higher than us. Well, in 8th grade, when we look at our scores on the NAEP, we actually are scoring higher. So, we're catching kids up. When you look at the SAT, we test anywhere from probably 55 to 70% of our high school kids, which, in a testing grade, typically juniors during that year. And we're beating the average in literacy. And we're also doing the same thing with ACT. One of the things that we really are promoting is not necessarily every student needs to go to a 4-year university. Our pathways are, again, our career tech program, which I know you're very familiar with, is I would dare say, and I say unequivocally, we have the finest CTA program in the state. What we are optioning kids is that they see a relevance with there. The number of students that are joining our student organizations, whether it's FFA, HOSA, and all these other organizations, has dramatically increased. And I think it's very important for us that we have to, for our kids, they always ask us, why do I have to study this? And I think with these courses, we're putting the how and the why together. So I think we continue to add relevance with that. Because of that, what we are seeing is that with our pathway completers, that's a 98% graduation rate. So I don't think that's done in isolation. I think we're looking at an approach, where we're going and the opportunities that we're seeing. I was just out of school this morning with the Promise Center that's in Fulton County, and again, I appreciate what y'all have done with the alternative pathway for graduation, with our students, that, again, allowing them to focus. If I want to become a welder, want to become a technician, that they are now, not necessarily having to take the same rigor of academic courses, but they're getting into courses that they pursue. And so I think that is where I do see the excitement. One of the things that I'll just conclude with is that, with this, we're seeing alignment, and what I've asked the staff to do is that now that we have our math standards, we have our literacy standards. I'm asking that now for every other course, whether it's PE, whether it's science, whether it's reading, that we have support of numeracy and math, that it's aligned with the year that they would study. And in other words, I would just say maybe fractions as 4th grade. Well, if they're taking music in elementary, now we begin to reinforce those math concepts, and so they can see the practicality, the reality of the alignment. Because when you think about music, I mean, you're talking about 4/4 time. 4/4 time in reality is just fractions. So I think we will continue to see that build upon that alignment. And I think that as I just kind of conclude with this answer, what is exciting is that we have a great state, and because of the actions of the governor, because of the actions of everyone here, our unemployment rate is, between 2 and 3% across the state. Well, that means our kids are being hired. Our folks are being hired. We have a great relationship with business and industry. One of the things that we'll be rolling out this year will be a work-based learning diploma option for kids. And now they're going to be able to have internships. But again, I think that will we see the gains? Yes, we will see the gains. As I shared, I think we do have to make sure we catch them early, whether that's pre-K on up. But I would think that I know that with the Literacy Council as well, it's not just starting at pre-K, but it's that birth through 5, part that is extremely, extremely important, because we have to have our parents involved. We have to have them engaged in their child's education. And that simply could just mean reading 3 or 5 minutes a night. It will make the difference. Having those conversations. One of the things, and again, I don't mean to be protracted with this, but it's just, taking screen time away from our kids. Letting them have hands-on activities such as cursive writing. That has a great bearing on a child's ability to learn. Again, with our new standards in literacy, we're looking at a writing component. And being able to express yourself, being able to have pencil and paper in hand, that is going to pay big dividends in the future. We're seeing the gains now, and again, I appreciate the work, and of course, I know Chairman Irwin with literacy is a big passion of his. So yes, we will see those gains, and we're already seeing gains throughout the state.
Thank you, Representative Hagan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Superintendent Woods, thank you for being here today. As you've been discussing phonics, and you mentioned that phonics or reading scores improved 15% last year. Did I hear that correctly?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear all
Did I hear you correctly that reading scores improved 15% last year?
In our lowest, when we look at the screener information for those that were in what we call the CSI schools, that lowest 5% of our federally identified schools, yes, we saw a 15% gain and upwards on milestones of an improvement of 29%.
That's great. Were you expecting that improvement, or?
Well, anytime you have, I would say, the further away you are from 100, when you're looking at that scale, 15%, would be great. But with our first year of implementation, that definitely beat expectations across the board. And I do want to reiterate again, talking with Amy Denty, Nick Philman, who runs supervises our coaches, preliminary information shows we will see great gains and great outcomes this year with that group as well.
Good. That'd be great. Mr. Chairman, can I ask a follow-up? So you mentioned prior to implementation of phonics last year, that you said a couple of times that we didn't have the science of reading.
Yes.
Why didn't we have it?
Mainly because that was in our standards. When you look at Common Core, again, for those that have been around, that was something that, that I did not approve. I did not like those standards. They were standards that were really not even created by teachers. It was more of a national movement, unfortunately, that began to offer a lot of unclarity and uncertainty. For many of our teachers, it did not come with resources or support or professional learning as well. We had nothing to really support, even in textbooks. And with that component, for whatever reason, again, if you remember or for those who don't remember, during the Great Recession, during the Obama administration, they said, we will give you roughly about $400 million. But in order to get that $400 million, we as states had to accept the Common Core standards. So that was not something, again, unfortunately, it was baked into the standards themselves. We as Georgia did not. This was prior to me coming up here, but we took the federal money, but also we took the federal standards as well. And it was just a set of standards that really did not support teaching, it did not support education, it did not have the science of learning. One of the things that we even have inside of our K-5 area, is a foundational piece, which really hit on phonics. It was more of a whole language approach. Which in the past we have not seen a lot of success in that. Unfortunately, education sometimes goes with pendulums. But with those standards, again, it was more of a federal approach, and unfortunately, it did not work.
Okay, thank you. May have.
Chairman Irwin, do you have anything before? Okay, Chairman Carpenter.
Thank you so much, and I do apologize. I'm not on the Education Committee, and I'm rarely on this committee. So all this is new. This is new world to me. But I do have a question, and my question is, a lot of the things that we're talking about has been stuff that I recall that we've had to do legislatively, and it feels like we as legislators have seen things that have frustrated us in education, such as literacy rates, such as cell phones, and from our constituents, and we're having to drive those conversations. And so I guess my question is, were you guys involved in those conversations? Or did you get involved after we were driving those conversations? Like, what was the lineage of how these things occurred? Because just as an outsider looking in, it feels like we've grabbing issues down here because we feel like there's gaps. And it doesn't feel like, to me, from the outside looking in, that the gaps are getting filled without us jumping into them. It's not. I just don't feel like I'm hearing you guys say, "Hey, we got a literacy problem. Do you mind figuring out, helping us find a solution to fix it?" It's us saying, "The house is on fire. The house is on fire. We got to fix this problem." Can you?
Well, once again, I'll go back to the history of Common Core standards. Again, anytime we look at standards adoption, that has to go through the State Board of Education. It's not something that I can arbitrarily say we're going to just replace standards. Prior to coming up here, we had a state board that, again, my recommendation was that we need to begin the process of removing Common Core standards from the state of Georgia. That did not take place. I did not have the votes to initiate that. And until Governor Kemp came in and began to replace those board members, I did not have the support to do so. Now, again, and that was something that I called for on day one. And so I think that was just a process that, again, legislatively, again, that comes underneath the purview of the State Board of Education. Now, upon doing so, we did actually, move that forward. Now, as COVID, and again, that's one of the things we look at, standard review and implementation can be very expensive. I don't know, Russ, do you remember the number that was associated with? Yeah, well, just with the standards themselves. Yeah. Yeah, so I mean, it's several millions of dollars as well. Well, with the money that was provided to us during that COVID period, that's where I took upon, once I had the vote, we began the initiation process of replacing the standards. So again, we used money that I had access to make that change. It was not in personnel, but again, wanting to make sure that we were using that money efficiently. It was the opportunity to take care of the Common Core, and thus we began that process during COVID. And again, it was something where it took math was basically a 2-year process we did. Not wanting to overload our elementary teachers, we followed that with a 2-year process of where we are with English language arts. So I think that gives you kind of a little bit of a timeline with that and why that couldn't be done. Now, a couple of years ago, I did come before the committees and I did share that it was my recommendation that we have coaches in place. So I did want to see that. I had actually talked with and had a discussion with Carrie Wright. She was the superintendent of Mississippi. So again, in-depth conversations of what that looked like and what that cost would be. At that time, again, I think we were looking at screeners. So again, money was placed in the screener, which again, which we need to have that in place. Now we have called up, we are having the support of putting coaches in place. So I'm appreciative of what we have here, but it was something that I did recognize several years ago with that. When you look at the cell phone ban, really the past 4 years, again, listening to the teachers, sharing, this is something we wanted to see. Now I'll be honest, in many cases, some of the things we're talking about, it could be done at the local level. There's not necessarily that things have to be done at the state level and through legislation. There's a lot of authority given to our local boards of education. So why this is there, again, I can't understand, again, I can't, answer for local districts, but I think, what Representative Hilton, again, hearing that, which I was, again, having discussions, having conversations, promoting that, and again, I was very appreciative that someone at the state level did take that up. And so, it's, an area of literacy, have we moved as fast as we want? Definitely not. Again, day one, I wanted to see literacy moved on, but also math was a high priority. In fact, as I was elected, what I heard more complaints, from the constituents and the people of Georgia was actually on math. And so that's why we decided to take on math first, just because of what I was hearing, from moms and dads at the state. And actually at that time, what we found out is that our math scores were probably lower than our reading scores at that time. So it was a methodical approach there. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairman Carpenter. Superintendent, I think a number of my questions really center around Chairman Carpenter's point. I think from a legislative standpoint, with any of our state agencies, we're looking for a partner and someone who can identify gaps if and when we don't see them, or bring those gaps to us for legislative solutions. So if you'll indulge me for a couple of questions around that. I chaired the study committee with Chairman Brass when we looked at absenteeism rates, and I think a lot of the data that was presented, some in this room, some around the state, was quite eye-opening. I would hope that from your standpoint and from your position that you would be able to bring us ideas as it relates to absenteeism, and I'm hearing you say today that we're down a couple of points this school year to a 19% rate, and that's great. I hear that you have a goal to get us below 11% in the next 5 years. We need that information from you.
Sure.
This committee, I'm not speaking for my Senate counterparts, but I'll lump us all in together. The legislature needs to understand what you're seeing there, what you're hearing from superintendents, what you're getting phone calls about. Again, I won't speak for Chairman Irwin, but superintendents call he and I quite a bit. Mm-hmm. And it's either something in the budget or it's something from a policy standpoint, and they very much want to bend our ears. I would hope that you would do the same and bend our ears on what you're hearing from them, and what's driven that rate down to 19% and what's the plan to get it to 11%. Mm-hmm. And so just starting on absenteeism, I'd love to hear what's gotten us down a couple of points this school year and what's the plan to get us to 11%.
Okay, well, glad to do so. Since 2 years ago, we actually have within our department, we have a team called the Whole Child. This is under Justin Hill. In doing so, we've had 2 conferences in which we have invited members of the General Assembly. I think even the Lieutenant Governor's office has been involved with that, and had I guess meetings to address the chronic absenteeism rate. One of the things we look at, and I'm very appreciative that this year that we did ask for an individual to be an attendance monitor for the state, and this was approved by, I believe, the House, and it's in our budget. I believe that's correct? Yes, the House added it in 2020. Yeah, so again, that was a direct request that, as what we found out as last year, which again, appreciative to have an individual that covered safety. So increasing that, and so that was something, again, we did not have an individual that would perhaps supervise or monitor, share best practices. We continue to look at ways as we communicate with district to say what is working, what's not working. What are we seeing, across the board that we could, apply throughout the state? Is it potentially funding that we're looking at, or is it positions within schools? Is it a QB addressment? So, by this year, we'll be able to, I think, give you a more fuller picture, just because we'll have personnel that can address that. But, one of the things we see is that, districts are aware of what's going on. One of the things that was, we talk with districts is like, okay, this is something we saw with COVID. Unfortunately, I think with that, we're trying to play catch up because now we recognize that, was it screen time? And again, that was just something we saw that with the scores that we just we're not hitting the mark. And of course, as we all know, as I shared, not having when kids are not in school, they can't learn. And of course, if they can't learn, then, it's going to be reciprocal on our scores. So, we continue to work on that. I think, again, appreciate that we have an individual that will, be responsible. That individual, will give the recommendations, and I anticipate that individual will come to you and make those recommendations as we collaborate with our districts across the state. But we're, I think been very active on that the past couple of years. We have the pieces in plate. I know we actually had I think a House and a Senate study on absenteeism as well.
I chaired it.
Okay, yeah.
And I think that's where my frustration is. I chaired a study committee, and my peers who wear these name badges have carried those pieces of legislation to bring chronic absenteeism rates down.
Mm-hmm.
I go back to Chairman Carpenter's point. We need a willing participant in the DOE to come to us on these issues. I will never speak for Chairman Irwin, but the last time I checked, I still oversee the largest single line item in the state budget.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not getting invitations to attend these events other than when it comes from the superintendents or the school board association that's out there, and I'm certainly not speaking on behalf of my committee, but if there's a plan, we'd love to see the plan and get on board with the plan so that we can expedite it. I want to switch gears. It was brought to my attention, if you go back to 1992 and you adjust for inflation and the value of the dollar and gold standard and everything else we can adjust for, we're spending 2.64 times the amount of money on K-12 education than we were in 1992, again, adjusted. But none of our scores, our NAEP scores, are not up. We are all going home and getting beat over the head with the fact that we've made these literacy rates public. Now, they were public before, but we're focusing on literacy right now, and we're saying that 37% of our students can read proficiently on grade level by the end of the third grade. And we're being asked, and it was already stated today, our graduation rates are up. Our literacy rates are down. Our reading NAEP scores are down about 2 to 2.5%, and our math scores are down about the same number, but we're spending 2.64 times as much. What am I supposed to tell my peers in this legislative body, and what am I supposed to tell my constituents that we're doing about it? And I ask that in the form of, what are you doing to help us help the 1.8 billion school children in Georgia?
Well, I guess in clarification, this 37% number, could you help me where that is coming from?
I mean, that is the number that we have been provided and that we have publicized and that has been given to us. I am certainly not saying by DOE, but that is the number that has been presented to us more than once, that we're seeing a proficiency rate of 37%, reading proficiently on grade level by the end of the third grade.
Well, again, when we're looking at proficiency rates as far as literacy, the only number and the only test that test every single third grader in the state of Georgia is the milestones. We have one metric. We have one metric that was agreed upon by the DOE, GOSA, and the State Board of Education. Now, according to that number, what we look at third grade, that number is not 37, it is 65%. And again, I'm not happy with 65%, but again, that's the only number that I have to work off of. So I think that, the positive is that we're not 37%, because again, I cannot justify our bus, based on the information that I have to work on, and in anyone that is state school superintendent. When you look at NAEP, as I shared, I think with NAEP is a different score, because, it's like, it does not work well with 100% score. We looked at 3%, and again, people said, well, Mississippi is scoring higher than us. Well, in 8th grade, we're actually beating Mississippi on the NAEP. Typically, on average, I think with the latest NAEP, what we have is that Massachusetts was around 43%, with literacy. Very rarely will you see anyone reach 50% on that. So I think that when you're looking at the National Report Card, it is trying to put some things in context. that were perhaps the constituency, if they're working off a 100-point scale, and if we're using NAEP, it will never balance out. But I think, for us, I think, where we, again, being the DOE, members of the General Assembly, for all of us, I hope that we can agree to work off the same number. And as I shared, the only number that I have, the only number that we promote and share at the DOE is based on the milestones that we currently have. And again, I can absolutely tell you that based on the metric that I've been given, it's 65% in the state of Georgia.
Chairman Irwin.
Great. Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, Mr. Superintendent. Let me thank your staff for the communication that they give me. Matt's standing right there next to you. I talk to him regularly and enjoy getting the information, and I know Director Rusk that he gets with you quite a bit to give me numbers as we need for my committee. And I agree with your comments on NAEP. I think we can also agree that entirely too many of our kids are not reading proficiently in this state. Now, exactly what that number is can be debated, but it's too many kids. I also think we can agree that it's going to take a team effort if we're going to get every kid reading on grade level in this state. It's not going to take just the teachers. It's not going to take just the parents and working with the ones when they're 0 to 5. Those parents, it's going to take everybody. And I'm going to personally put a lot of effort in making sure that we're all on the page and we all know the goal and we're all providing to the mission of teaching every child that comes through our programs to read proficiently. I would hope we could agree that reading is foundational to most learning, if not all learning. Mm-hmm. And I commend your talk on 0 to 5. We've definitely got to do a better job there. I would hope that we can also agree that children don't just suddenly become ours here in the state of Georgia when they're 5 years old. They are our students when they're born, and we need to look at it that way and start dealing with them that way. And what can we do to prepare them for when they do come in the door at 5 years old? I also agree with these legislators up here. If we're going to make this a team effort, we've got to have these hard conversations, get in the room, become a team. And I look at this 40 days is our class time as legislators. And it's time for us to be here at a set time and a set place together, just like a class that sits in the classroom studying science. Then when we go home, that's our distance learning. But it doesn't mean we stop being legislators or we don't stop trying to help children to read. I'm using that as the example. And so the communication with our team does not stop. It's distance learning, just like the students that are home doing that on a snow day and learning. So, with the idea, Mr. Superintendent, that it's going to take this entire state to get us to where every kid's reading, let's become a better team. Let's make sure that we're all on the team and we're all pulling together and we're all contributing, we're all getting invites, all of these things to the meetings so that we can accomplish this. I'm very proud of where we've gone this year, the communication I've seen from the DOE the last couple of years, but I also think that we got to get better. And I think that a good spot to start is here in this meeting with this discussion. And we know where we're at. How do we get better being a team? And the one we can start on is literacy, which we just said was foundational. So I'm going to quit with the preaching there. I'm going to finish by the way I started. Your staff, Mr. Superintendent, is doing a fabulous job. They come, they get the data. They give me the stuff I need and my committee members. What I'd like to see, Mr. Superintendent, is more of them here and more time in my committees and more information in the class days that we are here. And I think that'll benefit us and make us a better team. So again, thank you for what you do. I know it's not an easy job. I know it takes a lot of work and a lot of effort, a lot of energy. And I thank you for your staff, and the same thing to them, and just look forward to a very bright day in this state when all these kids are reading. And I you know, I'm kind of like my preacher, I don't seem to stop, but I'll point to you that imagine school where every child can read on grade level. That'll be a different class than I was teaching, and a different environment for the children. And then imagine what they could accomplish in that classroom every single day if every one of them could read on the grade level, that book sitting in front of them. And I think we're going to get there, and we'll get there as a team. Thank you.
Chairlady Hagan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to just reiterate or express my agreement with Chairman Irwin, Chairman Dubnik, and the rest of the committee in expressing how important this communication is. If we didn't communicate with one another, we would get nothing done here during session or in the interim, so it's key. And you've mentioned more than once that you've been having discussions with legislators over various things, but I've been on this Appropriations Subcommittee for 4 years and was the vice chair for 2 years, and I've never had a discussion about any of this with you or anyone from your office. So I would certainly hope that going forward that an effort would be made to have these discussions with members of this subcommittee, members of the Education Committee, and other members of the legislature, because we've got many who care deeply about education, public education for our students, for the future of the state, who are not on either one of these committees, but also care deeply and work on this type of legislation. So every other agency's director or commissioner under our purview here, this subcommittee has met with us, has met with me over the years, except for the big one, and that's yours. So I hope that going forward, we could see a change there.
Sure.
Thank you.
Be glad to.
Superintendent, I want to wrap up with one more question and one more comment. I think that literacy and numeracy, chronic absenteeism rates, focus on early, as has been said more than once to Chairman Irwin's point, they're hours before they walk in the physical building. Graduation rates are all the things that I think will go into a well-rounded, prepared student to, as I have a 16-year-old son, I'll say enter the real world at age 18, whether that's whatever may come after that. But the one that I personally believe will make the most difference is the parental involvement. Are you seeing any gains from initiatives inside your agency as it relates to parent involvement, finding things to talk to superintendents or school systems about as it relates to parent involvement? Is there anything this legislature can learn about parent involvement? Things that need to be, I don't know how we legislate parent involvement, but again, your boots on the ground, you're seeing it, hearing it. I'd just love to hear you speak to tangible items that we can do to encourage parental involvement.
Well, I think that, of course, I know Chairman Irwin's been in school for a long time. What we see with parental involvement, typically you're going to see more parents K-5, pre-K-5. They show up for the meetings. They're they're in the school. They're more involved. As you go from middle school to high school, we see a decrease, in parents that show up. But I think that one of the things where we have seen increases in both middle school and high school is that the more that our kids are involved into extracurricular activity, the more that parents show up. So I think there is a correlation. Again, one of the things you find out is that if a child is involved in school or extracurricular activities, their success of actually completing school goes up. So I think, that is something that definitely we continue to involve. I think having, our clubs such as CTA, FFA, all that, and if we can transfer them down to start that involvement early, which we are seeing that in more middle schools this year. And I think that will increase our family engagement and involvement. Sometimes as we, excuse me, looking at notifications for us and our website, and how do we touch our parents, again, whether it's social media and especially through our website. As we begin to expand and revamp the website, my thing is, how do we involve our parents more? Is there a metric in which we can notify them as far as what to expect? What are your rights as parents? And I think, that continues to evolve in the process, which we want to make sure that we continue to see that. When we look at our districts, we'll just say absenteeism. One of the things we have found out is that if there is a point of contact of a person, not necessarily a truancy, person or somebody that comes across with the hammer, but it's like calling, moms and dads, finding out, hey, Johnny's been gone, for a day or so. And I think one of the things that are the valuable lessons, what we're learning, is that having that person, and that may be something we can work on together. Is there a person at school that we need to, perhaps to fund? Is it something we look at QBE that is a direct contact for parents at the school level? Because typically all things are local in that area. I mean, and I think that would be an area in which we're able to notify parents. Having a point of contact, and one of the ways in which we do so is especially with our English language learners. Now, we do have federal funds that we do some things to help support that group of folks and expand some opportunities there. Sometimes that population is very highly mobile, so we want to make sure that they feel welcome. And how do we increase that population? One of the things we found out is a challenge is just finding people or interpreters that speak the language fluently. And when you look at the metro area, that can be highly problematic. Someone like, schools in DeKalb or some of these areas, have 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, perhaps even over 100 different languages that are there. So, for us, it is trying to listen to our districts. So what do you need? And once again, I think having that point of contact, which again, I wanted to express my deep appreciation to fund that person, it will help us coordinate at the state level. And again, as we begin to have a point of contact centrally at the state level, then again, we can begin to share best practices. We can again share information of how we can collaborate together, as needed, and whether that's funding, whether it's something in, looking at QBE, is it something in CCRPI, something we can do, to bring that about. So, those are things we continue to look at. Again, looking at the involvement, it's easier in elementary school just because moms and dads are there. But that's where we're trying to increase that involvement, and especially in the area of extracurricular activities, whether it's our clubs, FFA. I mean, FFA has just grown astronomically. I think when I first came up, we were below 40,000 members, and now we're up to 80,000 members. So having those availability there, allowing our teachers, again, to have that face time, giving them, and I think one of the things we have to look at is that I think it's very important that teachers maintain a line of communication and conversation with their parents, but in doing so, we've got to give them the time to do so. And that means, is it something that is in the bureaucracy that is taking that time away? Because I do believe relationships matter, and having those relationships at the local level really, really pays off. I mean, it's something that's very hard for us at this level to do. But at the local level, again, trying to give them the support to do that, I think that's a winning combination for us.
I certainly appreciate that. I want to reiterate Chairman Irwin's point, Chair Lady Hagan's point. We are willing participants.
Sure.
We're looking for partners. I hope you will be that partner for us. I hope that you will be here to advocate for things outside of the joint hearings. I had 297 unique requests to be in the FY27 budget, just in the part of the budget that I oversee. I would hope that you would be there to advocate for any of those items that that you feel are important and that we need. And I'll close with this. I don't know what your total staff count is, but there are 3 in this room that are fantastic, and they're there. I don't know that I've ever heard any of their voicemails, and I want you to hear that publicly.
Sure.
Meaning when we call, they answer. And I want to commend you for having them in the places that they are and being resources to us and what they can do to help us. And I hope that, again, we can, to Chair Lady Hagan's point, that we can expand on that partnership and relationship here moving forward and do bigger and better things together for the children and the families in the state of Georgia. So with that, Superintendent, thank you for being here. I appreciate your time. Members of the committee, thank you for being here. All those watching at home, thanks so much, and we will stand adjourned.
Okay, thank you.